Hi, I'm Karim. I'm here with Chaos Boxing in association with RealCombatMedia.com, and I'm joined by a legend of not just boxing but just sports in general, nutrition. It comes to working the corners, cuts, advice for fighters. Who he's worked with, it's just a glittering line of people he's worked with, and it's of course Mr. Kerry. Thanks for joining us today. I want to just get into this straight away. I mean, I've been looking at some of the people you work with, and some of the boxers you work with are just, I mean, I've got a few here, just Kevin Mitchell, Matthew Macklin, Anthony Farnell, Ricky Hatton, of course. What are boxers actually like to work with? Because there's a lot of egos in boxing. What are boxers like to work with and train?
Pretty humble, to be fair. They're normally a little bit lazy on their nutrition and probably train too hard, most of them. But to be fair, I've never had any big egos with boxers, and they're mostly humble, for my opinion.
You say they sort of like slack on the nutrition and stuff. I mean, do any fighters spring to mind who sort of are really on the spot and like obsessive about their nutrition and things like that?
None of them.
None of them.
No, they all train really. Look, I work in bodybuilding a lot, and bodybuilders are masters of nutrition.
Yeah.
And bodybuilders understand the importance of nutrition more than any other sportsman, whereas boxers feel they train very, very hard, incredibly hard, ridiculously hard, but they don't follow it up as much as they should do with the nutrition.
Yeah. I mean, notably, one of the sort of marquee fighters you sort of worked really closely with, of course, was none other than Ricky the Hitman Hatton, and he was notorious for going up and down in weight. I mean, going up 40 pounds plus in between fights.
That was a good camp.
Yeah, that was a good camp. Yeah. So, sort of, how did you manage that sort of swings in weight and everything?
Well, as much as Ricky had no discipline off season, the day Ricky came into the gym on a 10 or 12 week camp, Ricky really did become a Buddhist monk.
Right.
He switched it on like that. He trained incredibly hard. In fact, if Ricky had been, I always said to Ricky said it to in some of his interviews, if Ricky hadn't been a boxer, he could have been a powerlifter.
Really?
His leverages were fantastic, and he used to lift ridiculous weights.
Yeah.
But he followed his nutrition. So the day he came in the gym, he became a Buddhist monk.
Yeah.
And to be honest, a lot of people slag Ricky Hatton for his lack of discipline outside of camps. The fact that he said he's had a pint with everyone in Manchester, which he probably has.
Yeah.
But that lack of discipline and that cavalier attitude made him famous. That's why everybody went to see Ricky Hatton, and I honestly believe if Ricky Hatton had been a Buddhist monk throughout his entire career, he wouldn't have had the following. A lot of people don't realise that. So he had a fantastic career that probably burnt out a little bit sooner than it should have done, but it would never have got to the heights that it got with the following he had.
Yeah. Now, I mean, another fighter that springs to mind who's sort of notoriously not great with his nutrition is Tyson Fury. Now, the guy, obviously is not as disciplined with his nutrition, but he always finds a way to win. So how important do you actually rate nutrition and that side of things for a fighter's makeup and his performance?
Well, at the end of the day, nutrition will play a far bigger role in altering the composition of the human body. You can train extremely hard, but on the way home, if you have a McDonald's, you've blown the composition part of nutrition out the water. The reality is, most boxers need to make weight, and fights are won and lost on the scales. And good nutrition will help you repair the body from the trauma of training. And you've got to understand that training is bad for you. A training lifestyle is extremely good for you, but the actual training session for 1 or 2 hours is trauma to the body. And you do it for one and one reason only, and that is so the body can adapt and get fitter, faster, stronger. But before the body can adapt, it's got to repair and recover from the trauma of the training. Even though it's positive trauma, the body doesn't know it's positive trauma. The body thinks you're running away from a dinosaur that wants to eat you. So I call it 1, 2, 3. 1's trauma, training, 2's recovery, and 3 is adaptation. and then you do 1, 2, 3 again. But most athletes who don't have good nutrition never really fulfil 2.
Yeah.
And if you don't fulfil 2, how can you fulfil 3?
Yeah.
And then if you don't fulfil 2 and 3, your next number 1's got to suffer.
Yeah.
So always think of it 1, 2, 3. 1 is trauma, 2 is recovery, 3 is adaptation.
Yeah.
So if you get 1 right and you get 2 wrong, 3 will suffer, and then your next number 1 will suffer.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of, like, for those people that don't know what a strength and conditioning coach actually does, I remember I was talking to you earlier about the Ricky Hatton night where he fought Kostya Tszyu, and in the last few rounds of that, he pulled something magic out of the bag, because it was a really hard, grueling fight, 2 top, pressure fighters hitting each other with everything. Do you think the strength and conditioning pulled Ricky Hatton through that fight?
Well, more importantly, Ricky Hatton thinks it was, because I'm very, very proud that in Boxing News, in an interview, I've actually still got the Boxing News, he says that me and Costa were very evenly balanced. But I felt towards the second half of the fight that the strength work that I'd done with Kerry Kays started to pay off, and I felt that that's where I began to take over. So, for me to say whether it's right or wrong, it would be a bit self-indulgent, so I'd rather quote Ricky.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. He's a very modest man. Are there any fighters out there that you actually haven't worked with that you really would love to work with?
No, not really. I mean, my next birthday, I'm 67, so I pick and choose now, and I could do a lot more than I do now. And so I still work with the close few that I do work with: Frankie Gavin, Sam Eggington, Tommy Langford's, Tony Bellews, you know what I mean? And Brian Rose, and because of weekends away with bodybuilding as well, so I'm happy with what I do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of white collar boxing is getting big in the UK, really big, and my brother-in-law himself is actually doing a fight coming up soon, and I told him I was going to be speaking to you. Is there one sort of tip or like one thing that novice boxers or people just getting into boxing or fighting or any sort of combat sport should be doing with their nutrition from day one to get themselves sort of on the right track?
If you look at sports, you could split fitness into 2 categories. One category is cardiovascular fitness, the body's ability to repay the oxygen debt, and the other fitness is a muscular fitness. You'll get bodybuilders that are tremendously muscular fit but not very cardiovascular fit. You'll get some boxers that are very cardiovascular fit but not very muscular fit. We're here at a rugby match, those guys are probably about 50-50. You know what I mean? So they need strong muscles, and they also need to be cardiovascular fit. But the human body's made up of lots of composites, but we're made up of muscle, skeleton muscle, and body fat, amongst other things. And remember what I said before about 1, 2, 3. Bodybuilding is a very simple sport. You lift a weight to failure, you eat plenty of protein, that repairs the muscle and then makes the muscle adapt. But even cardiovascular fitness like boxers, sparring, running, circuits, you can't do that without using muscles. And most cardiovascular athletes don't eat enough protein.
Right.
They just don't eat enough protein, because remember what I said about number 2 being recovery and number 3 adaptation? That's the muscles that need to adapt. And if we don't eat enough protein, how can we have those building blocks for the muscles to repair from the trauma of training? Yeah.
Can I get just while we're on it? Can I get a good look, Arthur? Because he's about to fight in this white collar event, and he needs a bit of a gene up. Can I get a good look, Arthur?
Good look, Arthur, and eat plenty of protein.
Cheers. Well, thanks very much for joining us and talking to us about some of those things. If you check out part 2, which I'm actually going to ask if he'll do part 2 in a minute on Tony Bellew, that'll be coming up in a minute. But thanks so much for giving us a bit of an insight there into some of the sort of things that you do with strength and conditioning, and particularly a look back at Ricky Hatton and some of the interesting things about him. So thanks very much for that.
No problem at all.